So if we look at this image, it's got quite a horrible cyan cast to it. That seems to be a function of Adobe Camera Raw version 12.3, which has just been released. And it seems to be rendering old files in a very bizarre way. We could try to attempt to correct this with color temperature, which is a sort of typical way of doing that. But you can see that we get this very bizarre color in here, and the rocks here look very odd. So the best way to tackle this is to actually come down to camera calibration. Okay, and camera calibration is basically telling Adobe Camera Raw how to process each of the color channels. So what I'm going to do is to come down to the blue channel and bring down the saturation. Okay, I'm bringing it right down. Next, I'm going to go to the reds. It's not apparent that there are reds in this image, but there's a lot of red in this rock. So if we bring that down, we start to get a much more agreeable tone to the image. We could lift the blues back up again a touch and just bring down the reds. Right, we've set the picture, the overall look at the image in terms of the color channels. Now we can go up to the main sliders and look at temperature. If we increase temperature now, okay, we start to get the look that we want. Now it's becoming yellow and a little bit green. So as you increase temperature, you should just add in a little bit of magenta. Now if we bring the exposure down and pull the whites across, we start to get the three-dimensionality in the image that we want. Let's just lift those shadows. Let's bring those highlights down. Let's bring the exposure down and bring the whites across. Okay. Now we're still quite blue and cyany, if that's a word, up in the sky. So I'm going to come down to hue saturation and now tackle that down here. So I'm going to look at the aquas first, bring that down. If we push that each way, there's a little bit of an impact, but it's mainly blue. So if we bring that down, we're starting to get the look for the image that I want. So the right tones, the right color. So just bring exposure down a little bit more, lift the shadows a touch, bring down the highlights, and we could afford to just increase that temperature just a little bit more. Let's just lift that tint ever so slightly. If we go too far, it becomes magenta. So just on the tipping point there. And really that's what we've got. So they're the sorts of tones and look that I think are appropriate for this particular image. So let's just recap. First thing, you've got a crazy color cast like we had there. Come down to calibration and adjust the saturation or even the hue for each of the channels as appropriate for your image. The second thing is to look at color temperature and warm it. So if you have a blue cast, which is very typical for long exposure images like this one, if you've got a bit of a blue cast, move the temperature to the right and add some tint. And then you can start to work with the main sliders.